"They're asking for your savings, Clara," my bankrupt cousin said quietly, while my entire family laughed at him across the private dining room. "And you're really going to give it to him instead?" my fiancé asked, loud enough for every relative to hear, as if my money already belonged to him. I took off my engagement ring, placed it beside my untouched wineglass, opened my banking app, and transferred every dollar I had to the cousin everyone called a failure. For 3 seconds, no one understood what I had done. Then my mother screamed, "Clara, are you insane?" My stepfather lunged for my phone, my fiancé's face twisted from patient disappointment into something uglier, and my stepsister, Sophie, covered her mouth with both hands, looking almost thrilled beneath her fake horror. I looked at the confirmation screen. Transfer completed, $187,412, my entire savings, my future apartment, my emergency fund, the money I had died trying to protect in my last life. This time, I had not given it to the man who would betray me. I had lent it, with a signed agreement, to the only person in that room who had once tried to warn me, and when everyone called me a brainless fool, I only saved the receipt, locked my phone, and smiled. The private dining room at Bellamy House had always smelled like money trying to look tasteful. Dark wood panels, cream linen napkins, gold-rimmed plates, a wall of wine bottles lit from behind like sacred objects. My stepfather had chosen the place because he liked rooms where waiters lowered their voices and relatives felt important. In my last life, this room had been where I gave away everything. My mother had cried softly beside me, my stepfather had looked grave and dignified, my fiancé, Evan Hale, had held my hand under the table and promised me that once we got through this difficult season, we would finally buy our first home together. Sophie had sat across from me in a pale blue dress, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Clara, nobody wants to pressure you, we just need help." And I had believed them. I had believed my mother needed me. I had believed my stepfather's company only needed temporary support. I had believed Evan when he said the down payment would be for our future. I had believed Sophie was just a fragile younger sister caught in the middle, so I had transferred the money, all of it. By the end of that year, my stepfather's company had filed for restructuring. My mother had told me I should not be selfish about family losses. Evan had moved into the house bought with my money, and Sophie's name had appeared on the property deed. By the end of the next year, Evan and Sophie were engaged. By the end of my life, I was standing in a hospital hallway with a cracked phone, an empty bank account, and no one answering my calls. Then I opened my eyes again at this dinner table. Same wine, same room, same people. Only this time, I remembered the ending. "Clara," my mother said, touching my wrist with fingers that looked gentle to everyone else, her nails pressed into my skin. "Your father is speaking to you." Robert Pierce was not my father, but the family had corrected me so many times over the years that eventually I stopped correcting them back. He sat at the head of the table in a charcoal suit, looking tired in the calculated way powerful men looked tired when they wanted sympathy instead of accountability. His company, Pierce Development Group, had been temporarily strained for 3 years. Temporarily strained meant unpaid contractors, delayed investor reports, and family dinners where I was praised for being responsible right before someone asked for money. Robert folded his hands. "Clara, I won't pretend this is easy. But families survive by standing together. Your savings would not be a gift. Consider it a bridge loan to the company." In my last life, I had nodded before he even finished. This time, I picked up my water and took a slow sip. "How much?" I asked. Several relatives relaxed. My Aunt Diane smiled with relief, as if the good daughter had returned to her proper place. Robert's expression softened. $150,000 would stabilize the urgent accounts. The rest can go toward your home with Evan. That way everyone wins. Everyone. That word had always excluded me. Evan squeezed my knee under the table. I moved my leg away. He glanced at me, surprised, but his smile stayed in place. He was handsome in the polished, safe way that made people trust him before he earned it. Clean jaw, expensive watch, warm brown eyes that turned cold whenever I embarrassed him. He worked in commercial lending at Westbridge Capital, which made everyone treat him like a financial expert. Though in my last life he had somehow never understood why my name disappeared from the house title. "Babe," he said softly, "we talked about this." "No," I said, "you talked." I listened. A small silence opened. Sophie looked up. She was 24. Delicate, pretty, and always dressed like innocence. Had a seasonal color palette. Tonight she wore cream silk and pearl earrings my mother had bought after telling me she could not afford to help with my student loan payment years ago. "Clara," Sophie said, "Evan only means we shouldn't let fear make us cold. I know you worked hard for that money. We all know, but family is more important than numbers on a screen." I almost laughed. Numbers on a screen had paid her graduate school deposit. Numbers on a screen had covered Robert's payroll gaps. Numbers on a screen had bought my mother's medical spa memberships, Evan's temporary credit card balance, and Sophie's emergency move after she said her roommate was toxic. My numbers, their emergencies. At the far end of the table, someone snorted. Well, if she's looking for investment advice, maybe ask Julian, Uncle Mark said. He knows all about losing money. Laughter spread quickly. Relieved to have a safer target, Julian Reed sat near the service door because nobody had saved him a proper seat. He was my mother's nephew, my cousin by blood, and the family's favorite cautionary tale. 3 years earlier, he had founded a logistics software startup that everyone praised when investors were calling. Then funding collapsed, contracts vanished, and a lawsuit from his former partner buried him. Now he wore a clean but faded navy jacket, his hair too long, his cheekbones sharper than I remembered in my last life. He had approached me. After dinner, "Don't sign anything Robert gives you," he had whispered, "and don't let Evan handle the transfer." I had been angry, humiliated, loyal to the wrong people. I told him he was bitter because he failed. A month later, he disappeared from the family entirely. A year later, I heard he had been living out of his truck. Then, weeks before my death, I found an unread email from him in my spam folder. Subject: Robert and Evan lied to you. I never got to open the attachments. Now Julian looked down at his plate while the relatives laughed. Aunt Diane lifted her wineglass. "Honestly, Clara, give the money to Robert before you end up like him." "Like me?" Julian asked. His voice was quiet, but the room heard it. Robert sighed. "This is not the evening for your resentment." "My resentment?" Julian looked up. "You invited me so I could be the warning sign." Sophie's eyes widened. "Julian, that's unfair, is it?" Evan leaned back. "Come on, man. Nobody forced you to gamble with investors' money." The old accusation landed like a slap. Julian's hand tightened around his fork. I remembered that look, the look of a man who had proof but no power, a man who had been called a liar so many times that defending himself only made him look desperate. In my last life, I had looked away. This time, I put my napkin on the table. Julian did not gamble with investors' money. Every face turned to me. My mother frowned. "Clara, don't get involved in things you don't understand." "I understand enough." Robert's eyes sharpened. For the first time all evening, he looked less tired. Evan gave a short laugh. "You understand enough. Since when?" "Since I started reading documents before signing them." That landed harder than I expected. Sophie looked at Evan. Evan looked at Robert. Tiny movement. Quick. Familiar. There it was, the current beneath the table. My heartbeat stayed steady. In my purse, inside a plain manila envelope, was the document I had prepared that morning after waking up in a life I had already lost once. A promissory note. A loan agreement. Not perfect, not dramatic, not magic, just paper, terms, signatures, repayment schedule, collateral clause, and a witness line Naomi Brooks had insisted on adding when I called her before sunrise. Naomi had been my college roommate before she became a litigation attorney with a voice sharp enough to cut wire. When I told her I needed a personal loan agreement drafted immediately, she said, "Are you lending money or preparing for war?" I said, "Both." Now I reached into my purse. Evan's smile vanished. "What is that?" he asked. I ignored him and looked at Julian. "Do you still need capital?" His lips parted. My mother made a sound of disbelief. "Clara." Julian stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. "Yes," he said slowly. "But not like this." "Like what?" "Not with them watching. They were going to watch me give it away anyway." The silence grew teeth. Robert pushed back slightly from the table. "Clara, this is absurd. Julian is insolvent." "I know, he has judgments against him. I know, he has no credibility." I opened the envelope. "He has collateral." Julian's face changed. "Not much, just a flicker, but I saw it." Robert saw it too. "What collateral?" Robert asked. I placed the agreement on the table. "The source code rights attached to Reedroot's dispatch optimization engine, any proceeds recovered from pending claims connected to the failed Series B financing, and a secured repayment schedule if the claims resolve." Most of the relatives looked blank. Evan did not. His eyes moved to Julian. Sophie's fingers curled around the stem of her glass. My mother's voice dropped. "Clara, you are embarrassing us." "No," I said, "you announced my savings at dinner without my consent. That was embarrassing. I'm just deciding what happens to my own money." Evan leaned close. "No longer performing for the table. Don't do this." I looked at him. In my last life, I had mistaken that tone for concern. Now I heard the command. "Why not?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Because he'll lose it, maybe." "And what about us?" "There is no us in my bank account." Color rose up his neck. At the end of the table, Aunt Diane whispered, "Has she lost her mind?" Uncle Mark answered louder. No, she's just proving she has no mind to lose. A few people laughed again. But it sounded nervous now. Sophie stood halfway. Clara, please, I know you're upset. Maybe you think helping Julian makes you look kind. But this is your future, your wedding, your home with Evan. My home, I asked. She swallowed. Yes, whose name would be on the title? Evan snapped. What kind of question is that? A simple one. His mother, Patricia Hale, who had spent the evening speaking only to criticize the wine, gave me a cold smile. Usually the person with better credit manages the paperwork. Evan understands these matters. I'm sure he does. Robert reached for the agreement. I slid it back before his fingers touched it. You don't need to review it. I am trying to protect. No, you're trying to redirect money you already spent in your head. My mother stood. Enough. There it was, the voice she used when I was 16 and asked why Sophie got a car for graduation while I got a card, the voice she used when I was 22 and refused to co-sign a loan, the voice she used when I caught Sophie wearing my late grandmother's necklace and was told not to make a scene. Clara, she said, shaking with anger, you will not humiliate this family by handing your life savings to a bankrupt man at dinner. I'm not handing it to him. I took out a pen. I'm lending it under legal terms. Julian whispered. Clara, stop. I looked at him. His face was pale. He was not greedy. That mattered. He had every reason to snatch the offer and run, but he looked terrified for me. That was more care than anyone else at the table had shown. Do you still have the audit file? I asked. Robert went still. Julian's eyes darkened. What audit file? Evan asked too quickly. I smiled. Little, the one you once tried to tell me about. The table had become so quiet that I could hear the ice settling in my glass. Julian looked from me to Robert, then he reached inside his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, not the file, just one page, old, creased, protected like a last match in winter. I have copies, he said. Robert's voice was smooth. Copies of what? Julian did not answer him. He looked only at me. You know, not everything, I said. Enough to start. That was true. I knew fragments from a future I had not survived long enough to fully understand. I knew Robert and Evan had lied. I knew Julian had tried to warn me. I knew the money I gave my family became the chain around my neck. I also knew that in this life, I needed facts, not rage, not revenge fantasies. Facts. I signed the loan agreement, then I turned it toward Julian. His hand hovered above the pen. My mother's face had gone white. Clara, if you sign that, don't come to me when he ruins you. I looked at her. In my last life, I had come to her after Evan left, after the house title appeared under Sophie's name, after Robert said my transfer had been a voluntary family contribution, after I lost my apartment deposit, my credit, my job, and the last belief that being useful could make me loved. My mother had listened, then said, you should have handled it more gracefully. Evan needed warmth, not accusations. That memory made my voice calm. I won't come to you. She flinched. Julian signed. I opened my banking app. Evan stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Clara, do not transfer that money. I entered the amount $187,412, my entire savings. My thumb hovered over the confirmation button. My chest hurt, not because I doubted Julian, because money is not just money when you earn it by skipping vacations, wearing old coats, eating desk lunches, and telling yourself safety is worth more than comfort. Money is years. Money is sleep. Money is the quiet promise that when everyone fails you, you can still leave. In my last life, I had given away my exit. This time, I was buying one. I pressed confirm. Transfer completed. For 3 seconds, no one understood what I had done. Then my mother screamed, Clara, are you insane? Robert lunged for my phone. I pulled it back and locked the screen. Evan grabbed my wrist. Cancel it. I looked at his hand. Let go. He did not. The room froze. In my last life, I would have whispered his name, embarrassed by the scene. This time, I said clearly, if you don't release me, I'll ask the restaurant manager to call security. His fingers opened. Patricia Hale stood, shaking with fury. You just destroyed your future with my son. I picked up my engagement ring from beside the wineglass. For a second, Evan looked relieved. Then I dropped the ring into my purse instead of putting it back on. No, I said. I postponed the destruction. Sophie began to cry. It was impressive, how fast she could summon tears. One breath and there they were, shining under the chandelier. I don't understand why you're punishing us, she whispered. We love you. I looked at her. In another life, those tears had worked on me. Tonight, I remembered her in my hospital room, wearing Evan's hoodie, telling me, you always made love feel like debt. Clara, maybe that's why he chose me. I stood. I'm not punishing you. I'm refusing to fund you. Uncle Mark slammed his palm on the table. You arrogant little idiot, you think a piece of paper makes this smart, his bankrupt. Yes, Aunt Diane said, everyone is calling you a fool because you are one, a brainless fool. Patricia added coldly. The words moved around the table. Fool, brainless, ungrateful, unstable. Julian stood slowly. Enough. Robert gave him a contemptuous look. Sit down, Julian, you've done enough damage. No, I said. He hasn't. I turned to the relatives. You all watched Robert announce my money as if it belonged to him. You watched Evan speak about my savings as if engagement gave him signing authority. You watched Sophie turn my hesitation into moral failure. But the moment I make my own decision, I'm the fool. No one answered. That was the first quiet victory, not because they understood, because for once, they had no script ready. I took my coat from the back of my chair. Evan stepped toward me. We need to talk privately. You had weeks to talk privately. You chose an audience. His mouth tightened. You're emotional. I'm documented. He blinked. I lifted my phone just enough for him to see the recording icon before I stopped it. His face drained. In Colorado, recording laws were not as simple as most people assumed, and I would still ask Naomi before using anything. But the point was not the recording. The point was that I was no longer unarmed. Robert's expression changed from anger to calculation. Clara, he said, gentler now, let's not turn family into litigation. That depends on the family. I walked toward the door. My mother followed me into the hallway. Clara. Wait. The door closed behind us, muffling the storm inside. For a moment, she looked smaller, just my mother, with tired eyes and lipstick fading at the corners. I wanted that to move me. It did. That was the cruel part. Love did not disappear just because someone misused it. Mom, I said, and my voice almost broke. She reached for me. Sweetheart, I know tonight felt harsh, but Robert is under pressure. Evan is under pressure. Sophie is sensitive. You're the strong one. You always have been. There. It was again the sentence that had made a cage sound like praise. I stepped back. I'm tired of being the strong one everyone drains. Her eyes hardened. So you'll choose Julian over your own mother? I chose my own money. He will never pay you back. Then I'll learn an expensive lesson with terms I agreed to. And Evan? I looked through the small window in the door. He was standing beside Sophie now. She had her hand on his sleeve. He had not moved away. My answer was quiet. Evan can explain why my savings mattered more to him than my consent. My mother followed my gaze for 1 second. I thought she saw it. Then she said, don't be paranoid. Sophie is comforting him because you hurt him. Something inside me closed, not shattered, closed. There is a difference. Shattering is noisy. Closing is final. Julian came out a minute later, the agreement held carefully in one hand. He looked like a man leaving a burning building with someone else's baby in his arms. You should not have done that. He said, I know what I did. No, you don't. His voice was low. Robert will come after you. Let him. Evan too. I'm counting on it. Julian studied me. The hallway light made him look older than 32, exhausted, bruised by years of being the family's joke. Why? He asked. I could not tell him the whole truth. I could not say, because I died once after ignoring you. So I said, because you tried to warn me before, and I was too loyal to people who were robbing me. His throat moved. I don't know how fast I can repay you. You'll repay me according to the agreement, and if I fail, then I'll enforce it. For the first time that night, he almost smiled. Fair. I handed him Naomi's card. Call her tomorrow, not tonight. Don't answer Robert. Don't answer Evan. Don't answer anyone from the family. He looked at the card. You came prepared. Yes, you knew, didn't you? He asked softly, about the audit file. The dining room door opened behind us. Evan stepped out, face controlled, eyes furious. Clara, he said, we're leaving, now. I looked at Julian, then at Evan. In my last life, a command from Evan would have pulled me like a leash. This time, I put my coat on. No, I said, you are. Then I walked out of Bellamy House alone, with no ring on my finger, no savings in my account, and more power than I had felt in years. Behind me, Evan called my name. I did not turn around. At the valet stand, my phone vibrated. A message from Naomi. Did you sign before transferring? I typed back yes. She replied, good. Then let them panic. I looked through the glass doors one last time. Inside, my family had gathered around Evan and Sophie like I was the disaster and they were the victims. Julian stood alone near the hallway, but he was no longer looking down. Neither was I. And for the first time since waking up in my old life, I felt the future shift. Not saved, not safe, shifted. That was enough for a beginning. By morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. 43 missed calls, 17 from my mother, 9 from Evan, 6 from Robert, 3 from Patricia Hale, the rest from relatives who had discovered moral concern sometime between dessert and midnight. The family group chat had exploded before sunrise. Aunt Diane, Clara, What you did was cruel and irresponsible, Uncle Mark. Robert should have legal options. That money was promised, Sophie. Please stop attacking Clara. She must be overwhelmed, Sophie again. 2 minutes later, I just hope Julian doesn't take advantage of her pain. Evan, Clara, call me. We are not discussing this over text. My mother, you broke my heart last night. That one stayed on my screen longer than the others in my old life. It would have worked. I would have called, apologized, explained too much, begged her to understand that I had not meant to hurt anyone. By the end of the call, I would somehow agree to fix what they had broken. This time, I muted the chat, then I opened my banking app. My checking account looked almost empty. For one sharp second, fear rose in my throat. I had less than $4,000 liquid after the transfer. Rent was due in 12 days. My credit card balance was manageable but real. My job paid well, but not enough to pretend that losing nearly $200,000 did not matter. This was the part nobody saw in revenge stories. Boundaries still had bills. I sat at my small kitchen table, wrapped my hands around a mug of coffee, and let myself feel the terror, not regret. Terror, they were different. Regret meant I believed I had made the wrong choice. Terror meant I understood the cost of the right one. At 8, I called my landlord and asked about switching my lease renewal to month. At 8:15, I cancelled 3 subscriptions. At 8:20, I moved my emergency credit card from the shared digital wallet Evan had access to. At 8:30, I changed every password that mattered. At 8:42, I turned off shared location. At 8:43, Evan called again. This time, I answered. Where are you? He demanded. Good morning to you too. Don't play games with me. Clara, your location disappeared. Yes, turn it back on. No. A pause. When he spoke again, his voice softened. Baby, you scared me. I closed my eyes. There was the man I had loved, not the real man. The voice, the warmth he could put on like a coat when anger failed. I came by your apartment, he said. Your car is there, but you didn't answer. You came by without asking. You're my fiancé, not a search warrant. He exhaled sharply. We need to fix what happened. My mother is upset. Your mother is devastated. Robert barely slept. I slept fine. That was a lie. I had slept 3 hours, but it was a useful lie. You humiliated me, he said. There it is. What? The real injury. Don't twist this. I stood beside you for 3 years. You stood beside my bank account. His silence was ugly. Then he said, if you don't reverse that transfer today, we need to reconsider the wedding. In my last life, those words would have sent me into panic. The wedding had been the finish line I thought would prove I was chosen. Every seating chart, deposit, dress fitting, and floral invoice had felt like evidence that I was finally becoming someone permanent in someone else's life. Now I looked at the folder on my table labeled wedding contracts. I had reviewed them at 5 in the morning. Non-refundable deposits, cancellation deadlines, payment methods, my card, my name, my responsibility, of course. Okay, I said. Evan sounded confused. Okay, what? Reconsider it. Clara, I'll send you the vendor list. You can decide which deposits you want to take over. You're being childish. No, I'm being billable. He hated that. I heard it in his breath. I'm coming over. I'm leaving in 10 minutes. Where? The bank. Good. We'll go together. No. Evan, I'm going to remove you as a trusted contact on my accounts. For a moment, there was no sound. Then his voice dropped. You're making a mistake you can't come back from. I looked at my bare ring finger. I know. I hung up. The bank branch had glass walls and fake plants and a coffee machine that smelled faintly burned. I arrived early and asked for Marisol Grant, the manager who had handled my high-yield savings account in my last life. Marisol had called me twice after the transfer to Robert's company, asking if I was sure I intended to authorize such a large movement of funds. Evan had told me she was being overly cautious. I had ignored her this time. When she came out in a navy blazer and careful smile, I felt an unexpected ache. Some people had tried to protect me. I had been trained to distrust the wrong warnings. Ms. Whitman, she said, I saw your appointment note. You want to review account access? Yes. And I want printed confirmation of yesterday's transfer, including timestamp, recipient, and authorization method. Her expression stayed professional, but her eyes sharpened. Of course, inside her office, I removed Evan from every account notification where he had been listed as emergency contact. He had never had direct access, but he had proximity. Proximity had been enough for him to know balances, timing, pressure points. I changed my verbal password. I requested alerts for any attempted external inquiry. Then I slid the signed loan agreement across the desk. I want to confirm this transfer cannot be reversed by a third party claiming family interest. Marisol read the first page. Was there any coercion? I almost Smiled. Not for this transfer. She looked up. That answer has weight. It does. Do you want to file a note on the account? Yes, she typed as I spoke. Large transfer initiated by account holder voluntarily, no third-party authorization. Account holder reports family pressure regarding separate financial requests and wants all future inquiries denied unless personally verified in branch. When she finished, she printed the transfer confirmation. The page came out warm. I held it like a shield. At 10:12, Robert called. I let it go to voicemail at 10:14. My mother texted, "Your stepfather has legal questions. Please do not make this worse." At 10:16, Marisol's desk phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face cooled. "One moment, please." She muted the call. "Do you know a Robert Pierce?" "Yes. He says you are emotionally distressed and made an unauthorized transfer of funds that were committed to a family business investment." I laughed once. It came out colder than I expected. Marisol did not laugh. "Would you like me to proceed with the account note?" "Yes." She unmuted. "Mr. Pierce, we cannot discuss any account holder's information with you. Any claim regarding business commitments should be addressed through your attorney. Do not call this branch again seeking private account information." She hung up. A strange calm settled over me. Not triumph, proof. Robert had moved faster than grief allowed. That told me exactly what he valued. When I left the bank, Evan was waiting beside my car. He wore a grey overcoat and the expression he used when clients disappointed him, but he still wanted their money. "You blocked my mother," he said. "She called me a disgrace before breakfast. She was upset. She can enjoy that privately." He stepped closer. I stepped back. His eyes flicked to the bank envelope in my hand. "You really did it?" "Yes." "Do you know what people are saying?" "Which people?" "Our families." "No." "Then." His jaw flexed. "They think you're unstable. They think Julian manipulated you." "Honestly, Clara, I'm trying not to agree. Trying must be hard for you. Stop with the attitude." A couple walking into the bank glanced over. Evan noticed, lowered his voice, and smiled tightly. "Let's go somewhere and talk." "No, Clara, you don't get privacy after staging a public ambush." "That dinner was not an ambush." Robert announced my money. "Your mother discussed my credit." Sophie spoke about my future home. "You told me we had talked about it when we hadn't. What would you call it? A family conversation." Then my answer was part of the conversation. His face hardened. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone for a failed cousin who would sell you out for a second chance." "Interesting," I said. "What? You're very angry about Julian receiving money you claim he'll lose, because I care about you." "No, because you had plans for it." His eyes flickered. "They're small, but enough." "What plans?" he asked. I gave him a pleasant smile. "That's what I'm finding out." I opened my car door. He put his hand on it. "Clara, don't make me choose between you and my family." I looked at his hand. "You already chose between me and my money." His grip tightened. "You are not this cold." "No," I said. "I was colder to myself before." He stared at me like he did not recognize me. "Good." I drove straight to Naomi's office. Naomi worked on the 22nd floor of a building full of brushed steel, quiet elevators, and receptionists who could smell panic through perfume. She met me in a conference room with coffee, a scanner, and the expression of a woman who had expected disaster and was pleased to see it arrive organized. "You look terrible," she said. "You look expensive." "I am." "Sit." I sat. She reviewed the signed agreement, the transfer receipt, the family messages, and the banknote. "You did one reckless thing in the least reckless way possible," she said. "That sounds like praise." "It's a diagnosis." I leaned back. "Can Robert sue?" "Anyone can sue. Winning is harder. He would need to prove the money was legally committed to him or his company." "Was it?" "No." "Did you sign anything?" "In this life." I caught myself a second too late. Naomi looked up. "In this life." I took the coffee. "I'm tired." She watched me for another beat, then let it go. "Did you sign anything recently?" "No." "Did you verbally commit in writing, email, text?" "No." "Evan sent me spreadsheets. I never agreed." "Good. Send me everything. I also want to review the wedding contracts." Her eyebrows rose. "Are we canceling a wedding or making him sweat?" "Both, probably. That's my girl." I handed her the folder. She flipped through it. "You paid most deposits." "Yes, of course you did. I thought I was building a life. You were being invoiced for hope." That sentence went straight through me. For a moment, I had to look away. Naomi's voice softened. "Clara, I'm fine." "No, you're functional. Different thing." I pressed my fingers to my eyes. "I don't want to fall apart yet." "Then don't. Schedule it." I laughed despite myself. She slid a yellow legal pad toward me. "Now, tell me about Julian." I told her what I could. Not the rebirth, not the hospital, not waking up with the taste of antiseptic in my mouth and the memory of Evan's hand slipping from mine, but I told her Julian had warned me. I told her Robert reacted to the words audit file. I told her Evan reacted too. I told her I suspected the collapse of Julian's company was connected to Robert's financing and Evan's bank contacts. Naomi listened without interrupting, then she wrote 3 names: Robert Pierce, Evan Hale. Martin Vale. I pointed to the last one. Who is that? Julian's former partner. He was sued by one of my firm's clients last year for falsified vendor invoices. Settled quietly. My pulse changed. Can you get the filings? Public ones? Yes. Sealed ones? No. But patterns leave footprints. She tapped the page. You need 3 lanes: personal money, wedding liability, family fraud. Do not mix them emotionally, even if they overlap factually. Okay, and do not meet Evan alone. I can handle Evan. I know, that's why I said don't meet him alone, not because you're weak, but because he is invested in making you look unstable. That was exactly right. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. Clara, I know you hate me right now, but Evan is suffering. He has always loved you. Please don't punish him because Julian got into your head. Below it was a photo, Evan sitting in Sophie's living room, head bowed, her hand on his shoulder, a performance staged for one viewer. Me. I showed Naomi. She made a face. She's either stupid or very confident. Confident. Good. Confident people are generous with evidence. By late afternoon, I was exhausted enough to feel hollow. I drove home through traffic, bought soup from the deli downstairs, and found my mother waiting outside my apartment building. She had never liked coming to my neighborhood. Too many students, too much street parking, not enough evidence that she had successfully married upward. Tonight she stood by the entrance in a camel coat, arms folded. You wouldn't answer, she said. I was busy protecting my accounts. Pain crossed her face, quickly replaced by anger. You make us sound like criminals. I didn't call the bank pretending to be concerned about my mental state. That was Robert trying to stop you from ruining your life. Mom, what? Does he know Evan and Sophie are involved? She blinked. Involved in what? I watched her face carefully. Sophie had her hand on Evan all night. Today she sent me a photo from her apartment. My mother's mouth tightened. Sophie is kind. She comforts people. You used to admire that about her. I used to pay for it. Her eyes flashed. You are being ugly. No, I'm being accurate. She is your sister, stepsister. That distinction hurts me. Your choices hurt me. She drew back. For years that would have made me apologize, not because I was wrong, but because her withdrawal felt like drowning. Now I stood still. My mother's voice broke deliberately. I don't know what happened to you. I wanted to say, I died. Instead, I said, I stopped volunteering for pain. She looked past me, toward my building lobby. Robert says if you don't help, he may have to cut staff, people with children, people with mortgages. Can you live with that? There it was, the bigger guilt. When family did not work, they borrowed strangers. Did Robert use the last bridge loan to pay staff? I asked. What? The money Aunt Diane gave him, the $75,000 from Uncle Mark, the vendor credit he extended. Did that go to staff? She hesitated. That hesitation was a door opening. I don't know, she said. You should. Don't speak to me like I'm stupid. I'm not. I'm speaking to you like you're responsible for what you defend. Her face crumpled. But this time I saw the anger behind the tears. You think you're better than us now. No. I think I'm separate from you. That hurt her more. Good. Some truths should hurt the people who made them necessary. She left without hugging me. I went upstairs, locked my door, and ate soup from the container while scanning documents for Naomi. At 9:30, Julian called. His voice was rough. I spoke to Naomi, and she terrifies me. She does that. She said not to thank you emotionally because the loan is a legal instrument. I smiled. That sounds like her. A pause. Thank you anyway. You're welcome anyway. I found something, he said. My spoon stopped. What? Old email threads, from before the funding collapse. Evan was copied on one chain. The room seemed to narrow. Evan, he wasn't my banker, not officially, but Westbridge was reviewing a credit facility tied to one of Robert's projects. My software contract was supposed to reduce their logistics costs, then the facility changed terms, my contract was cancelled. And Martin accused me of misappropriation 2 weeks later. Do you have the emails? Yes, send them to Naomi. I did. His breathing shifted. Clara, there's more. I stood without realizing it. What? Martin mentioned a property holding company in one message. I didn't know why until tonight. The name looked familiar because Sophie posted from a model home last month. Same development. My skin went cold. What development? Larkspur Row. The folder in my desk drawer seemed to burn. Larkspur Row. The townhouse Evan had told me was perfect for our future, the one his mother said required quick action, the one I had nearly funded in my last life. I opened my laptop and searched my email. There it was from Evan, subject, our place. Attached, estimated down payment, closing costs, title options. I had not opened the attachment in this life. Now I did. The spreadsheet loaded. My name was not in the first title scenario, neither was Evan's. The proposed title holder was an LLC, Hale Pierce Residential Holdings. My breath stopped. Hale, Pierce, Evan and Sophie. Then another message arrived. Naomi, do not react in writing to anyone tonight, but check your email for any Larkspur Row documents and forward them. Immediately I forwarded everything. Then I sat in the dark of my apartment while my phone lit up again and again with messages from people who thought I was the fool. They did not know I was finally reading the fine print, and the fine print had teeth. Julian's office was not an office, it was a rented room above an auto glass shop, with a cracked window, 2 folding tables, 1 printer, and a whiteboard covered in lines so dense it looked like a conspiracy theorist had learned accounting. He apologized 3 times before I took off my coat. Stop, I said. I once audited a trucking company from a supply closet because the CFO said conference rooms were for revenue-generating staff. This is fine. He smiled faintly. You always make humiliation sound procedural. It usually is. On the table were banker boxes labeled with black marker, Read-Route contracts, Series B, Martin, Pierce, Westbridge. Seeing my stepfather's company name in Julian's handwriting made the last soft part of denial harden. Julian looked at the boxes. Then at me. I need you to understand something before you open these. Okay, I didn't keep this because I wanted revenge. At first, I kept it because I thought it would clear my name. Then I kept it because throwing it away felt like admitting they had successfully rewritten me. I nodded. I understand that. You might not like what's inside. I already don't like the people. That helps. We started with the timeline. Read-Route had been Julian's startup, built around routing software for mid-sized logistics and construction suppliers. Robert's company had signed a letter of intent to use it. Westbridge Capital had been considering a credit package for Robert, partly based on projected operational savings from Julian's system. Martin Vale, Julian's co-founder, controlled investor relations. Then, within 6 weeks, everything collapsed. Robert cancelled the pilot program, claiming Julian failed to deliver. Westbridge withdrew favorable terms. Martin accused Julian of diverting funds. Investors panicked, vendors sued. Julian became the story everyone preferred. Brilliant idea, reckless founder, predictable fall. I read the documents for 2 hours before speaking. This cancellation letter from Robert says Read-Route missed the integration deadline. Yes. But this email from his operations director says the integration testing was successful. Julian nodded. Keep reading. I did. 3 pages later, I found an internal Pierce memo. Read-Route deployment creates unfavorable dependency ahead of Westbridge review. Recommend postponement until alternative vendor arrangement finalized. Alternative vendor. I flipped faster. The alternative vendor had been a shell company connected to Martin Vale's brother-in-law, and Pierce Development had paid that shell company nearly $400,000 for consulting. I sat back. There it is. Julian's voice was flat. One piece of it. I understood why he looked exhausted. Fraud was rarely one dramatic knife. It was a drawer full of small blades. Naomi arrived at noon with sandwiches and a portable scanner. She stepped into the room, looked at the boxes, and said, I love a paper trail maintained by an angry organized person. Julian blinked. I'm not angry. Naomi gave him a look. Then get angry. It's useful when supervised. For the rest of the afternoon, we worked not like heroes, like clerks in a war. We scanned contracts, compared signatures, built a spreadsheet of dates, amounts, names, and contradictions. I found inconsistencies faster than Julian expected because numbers had always spoken to me more honestly than people. At 3, I found Evan, not physically, worse, in the metadata of a PDF. The altered cashflow model Robert submitted to Westbridge had been last edited by Evan Hale. I stared at the screen. Naomi came around behind me. Well, she said quietly, that's inconvenient for him. Julian looked over. What? I pointed. Evan touched the model. Julian's face changed. Anger first, then something like pity. For you, he asked. Don't. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. He raised both hands. I was going to say that must hurt. It did. That was the worst part. Evidence did not erase grief. It gave grief structure. I had loved Evan for 3 years. I knew the way he took his coffee, the scar near his thumb, the song he hummed when cooking, the exact expression he made when pretending not to be jealous. I had imagined children with his eyes. I had once thought his hand on my back. In a crowded room meant safety. Now I was looking at his digital fingerprint on a document that helped destroy my cousin and later helped steal my savings. My throat tightened. Naomi saw it. We can stop. No, Clara, no, I repeated. Keep going. At 4:30, my phone buzzed with a call from Evan, then a message. I'm outside your apartment. We need to talk like adults. I did not answer. Another message. Your mother is crying. Sophie is sick over this. I don't know who you think you're proving yourself to. Then a photo. My apartment door. He was standing outside it. Naomi took one look and said, absolutely not. She called building security from my phone, then sent Evan a text as my attorney, Mr. Hale, MS. Whitman has requested no unannounced visits. Further attempts to enter or pressure her at home will be documented. Evan responded in less than a minute. This is a private relationship issue. Stay out of it. Naomi smiled. The mating call of men who hate witnesses. Julian almost laughed. I did not, because beneath the anger, fear had begun to move. Evan knew where I lived. He knew my routines. He knew my passwords had changed. He knew the money was gone. People who believed they owned access did not respond calmly when doors closed. At 5, Naomi drove me back to my building herself. Security confirmed Evan had left after being warned. My hallway was empty, but a folded note lay under my door. I picked it up with 2 fingers. Clara, I know you're scared and embarrassed. I forgive you, but you need to stop before you ruin us permanently. Julian is using you. Your family is worried. I am worried. Come to Larkspur Road tomorrow at 11. We can still fix the house paperwork. I'll put your name wherever you want if that's what this is really about. I love you, Evan. Naomi read it over my shoulder. Generous of him to offer your name on a house you were paying for. I stared at the words, I forgive you. There were phrases people used when they were not apologizing. But repositioning the knife, I took a photo of the note, then I put it in a plastic folder. Tomorrow at 11, I went to Larkspur Row, not alone. Naomi came in her own car and stayed parked near the leasing office. Julian waited 2 blocks away with a laptop and a hotspot, because he had discovered the development company's public records portal and was pulling filings in real time. I walked into the model home wearing a beige coat Evan once said made me look approachable. The sales agent, a woman named Claire with an eye and a professional smile, greeted me warmly. MS. Whitman. Yes, Mr. Hale is in the kitchen with MS. Pierce. MS. Pierce, not my mother, not Patricia. Sophie. I walked quietly across staged hardwood floors. The townhouse smelled like new paint, lemon polish, and betrayal. Voices carried from the kitchen. Sophie was speaking. I just don't want my name anywhere if Clara is going to be dramatic. Evan answered, tired and familiar. Your name won't show at first. The LLC handles that. At first, after closing, we restructure. My mother knows a title attorney, and Clara pays. A pause. My hand tightened around my purse strap. Evan said, Clara always comes back when she's had time to feel guilty. Sophie laughed softly. She looked so stupid at dinner, giving everything to Julian. I almost felt bad. No, you didn't. No, she admitted. I didn't. My vision narrowed. In my last life, I had never heard the truth spoken so plainly. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe betrayal hurts less when it stops pretending to be a misunderstanding. The sales agent cleared her throat behind me. Evan turned for half a second. His face showed the real thing, panic. Then he recovered. Clara, he said, you came. Sophie's smile disappeared. I stepped into the kitchen. It was beautiful. White quartz counters, brass fixtures, a breakfast nook where I had once imagined Sunday mornings. I looked at the island in my last life. I had unpacked plates there while Sophie sat on the counter drinking wine and calling herself basically family. Evan had kissed my forehead that day and told me not to be insecure. Now I set my phone on the counter recording. Again, I would let Naomi decide what could be used, but I wanted the truth captured somewhere outside my body. Sophie, I said, you look comfortable. She put a hand to her chest. I didn't know you were coming. You invited me through Evan's note. Evan's eyes flicked to my purse. Can we talk privately? No. I'm done with rooms where everyone knows the plan except me. The sales agent shifted. Would you like me to give you some space? Yes, Evan said. No, I said. She froze. I smiled at her. Actually, Claire, I have a question. In the current purchase structure, who is listed as buyer? Evan's voice sharpened. That's not appropriate. The sales agent looked between us. I'm not able to disclose. No problem. I opened my folder and took out the spreadsheet Evan had emailed me. Is Hale Pierce Residential Holdings still the proposed title entity? Sophie went pale. Evan stepped forward. Where did you get that? You sent it to me. I sent you estimates. You sent me evidence. His mask slipped. You don't understand how property structuring works. I understand that my name was not on it. That was preliminary. Was Sophie preliminary too? Sophie's eyes filled. Clara, Please don't humiliate me in public. I turned toward her. You cried at dinner while calling me selfish. You sent me a photo of yourself comforting my fiancé. You came to the house I was supposed to pay for and discussed hiding your name until after closing. Public humiliation is not something happening to you, it's something you outsourced and lost control of. The sales agent's mouth opened slightly. Evan grabbed my elbow. I did not raise my voice. Let go. He leaned in. You are acting insane. I looked down at his hand, then at the sales agent. Claire, please note that Mr. Hale is touching me after I asked him not to. Evan released me instantly. Good. Witnesses changed gravity. His face reddened. You've become cruel. No, I said. Specific. My phone buzzed. Julian. I glanced at the screen. Property LLC registered by Hale Holdings and Pierce Family Trust. Initial filing signed by Patricia Hale. Amendment draft adds Sophie P. After closing, I turned the screen toward Evan. Interesting amendment. He stared. Sophie whispered. Evan. He looked at her with fury. Not love, not protection. Fury that she had spoken. There was another crack in the illusion. I picked up my phone and folder. Claire, I won't be participating in this purchase if my name, funds, credit, or documents appear anywhere in connection with this property. My attorney will contact your office. Claire nodded quickly. Understood. Evan followed me to the door. Clara, stop. You're burning everything down. I turned on the porch. No, I'm checking who installed the gas line. His face twisted. You think Julian is better than me? This isn't about Julian. It is, you trust him now, a bankrupt cousin who crawled back when he smelled money. I looked at him for a long moment. You're angry because you keep describing yourself. That hit. Sophie appeared behind him. Crying for real now. Evan, what amendment? He did not answer her. I walked to my car. This time, he did not call after me. At 6 that evening, Sophie posted in the family group chat. I didn't want to say anything, but Clara came to Larkspur Row and attacked me in front of strangers. I think Julian has convinced her we're all enemies. Please pray for her. Aunt Diane responded with a string of shocked emojis. Patricia Hale wrote, this wedding should be postponed until Clara receives help. My mother wrote nothing. Then Robert wrote, Clara, your behavior is creating reputational harm. Return to the family table before legal consequences become unavoidable. I waited until the messages slowed. Then I sent one image, a screenshot of Naomi's legal notice, notice of preservation of evidence. Names, Robert Pierce, Pierce Development Group, Evan Hale, Hale Pierce Residential Holdings, Sophie Pierce, Patricia Hale, Martin Vale. Below it, I wrote only, please preserve all communications, property documents, financial records, and related electronic data. The chat went silent, not for a minute, for 27 minutes. Then my mother called. I let it ring. Naomi texted, beautiful, cold, minimal, I'm proud. Julian texted, Robert just tried to call me. I wrote back, don't answer. He replied, I didn't, but Clara, yes, if this works, it won't just clear me, it may expose how Robert kept his company alive. I stared at the message. Then another came through, and Evan may have helped him. I looked around my apartment. The couch Evan had helped choose, the framed engagement photo on the shelf, the stack of wedding invitation samples still tied with ribbon. One by one, I took them down, not dramatically, not crying. I put the photo in a drawer. I put the invitations in the recycling bin. I put the ring in Naomi's evidence envelope. Then I sat at my desk and opened a new spreadsheet. Title, what they took, column A, person, column B, amount, column C, date, column D, evidence, column E, recoverable. It was not revenge yet, it was inventory, and sometimes inventory is where freedom begins. The invitation arrived by email on Thursday morning. Subject, Hale Pierce Family Reception. Attendance requested, not invited, not welcome, requested. Patricia Hale had organized the reception at the Crescent Club, a private venue with marble floors and a waiting list full of people who believed exclusivity was a personality trait. Officially, it was a family reconciliation dinner and informal celebration of future partnerships. Unofficially, it was a stage. Naomi forwarded the email back with one line, they are going to try to control the narrative publicly. Good, let them. I called her immediately. You want me to go? I want you to decide whether you want the story told with you absent. I looked at the invitation. Evan's name, Sophie's name, Robert's name as one of the hosts. My name was listed under family attendees, not as Evan's fiancé. A demotion disguised as etiquette. What if they announce the wedding is postponed? They might. What if they say I'm unstable? They probably will. What if I lose it? You won't. You don't know that. I know you made a spreadsheet called What They Took. Emotionally unstable people rarely label columns that neatly. I laughed, then stopped because it hurt. Naomi's voice softened. Clara, you don't need to perform strength. You only need to bring facts. Facts. By then, we had many. Julian's records showed that Robert's company had received inflated consulting invoices from Martin Vale's shell vendor while cancelling Julian's legitimate software contract. Evan's metadata appeared on a revised financial model used to justify credit changes. Larkspur Row documents tied Patricia, Evan, and the Pierce family trust to the property structure. Sophie's texts, which she had sent carelessly to mutual acquaintances, suggested she knew more than she admitted. One message came from Sophie to a friend named Marin. Clara is so obsessed with being needed, Evan says. Once she calms down, she'll pay. I just have to look hurt. Marin, perhaps not loyal enough or perhaps offended by being pulled into fraud, forwarded it to me after the legal notice circulated. People change sides for many reasons: guilt, fear, opportunity. The reason mattered less than the timestamp. The party was on Saturday. I spent Friday doing ordinary things: laundry, work emails, grocery shopping, a walk around the lake near my apartment. That was important in my last life. Crisis had swallowed every routine until I existed only in reaction to other people. This time, I bought oranges, I cleaned my bathroom, I slept 7 hours on Saturday evening, I wore a black dress with long sleeves and a neckline my mother would call severe. I put on small gold earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, the ones Sophie once borrowed and returned with one missing back. I carried a slim folder and left my engagement ring at Naomi's office. The Crescent Club glittered when I arrived: crystal glasses, white flowers, low jazz, people speaking in polished voices. I saw my mother first. She stood beside Robert near the bar, her smile too fixed. When she saw me, relief flashed across her face before she covered it. "Clara," she said, hurrying over. Thank God, not because she missed me, because my absence would have ruined the scene. She reached for my hand. I let her take air. Her smile faltered. "You came. I was requested." Her eyes moved over my dress, my folder, my face. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." "For whom?" "For everyone." I looked past her. Evan stood near the fireplace, speaking with 2 men from Westbridge. He looked impeccable, calm, a little sad. The wronged fiancé costume fit him well. Sophie stood beside him in pale pink. Her hand rested on his arm this time. She did not remove it when she saw me. Progress, in its way. Robert approached with a politician's smile. "Clara, I'm glad you chose maturity." "I chose attendance." His smile tightened. "Tonight is important. There are investors here, family, friends, people who do not need to witness private conflict. Then why invite them to it?" His eyes cooled. "You always were sharper than kind." "No, I was kind when I should have been sharper." My mother inhaled. "Clara." Robert stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I don't know what Julian has promised you, but he cannot protect you. Neither can your attorney friend if you start making defamatory accusations. I don't plan to accuse." "Good, I plan to document." He stared at me before he could answer. Patricia Hale tapped a spoon against her champagne glass. The room quieted. She smiled beautifully. "Thank you all for coming. Families, as we know, are not built only in easy seasons, they are tested in difficult ones. Tonight, we gather not for gossip, but for grace." Several people murmured approval. I almost admired the efficiency. Grace, in Patricia's mouth, meant silence from the injured. She continued, "My son Evan has shown extraordinary patience recently. He has faced confusion, hurt, and public embarrassment with dignity, and Sophie, sweet Sophie, has been unfairly dragged into conflict despite having only love in her heart." Sophie lowered her eyes. Evan looked down, noble in profile. My mother's hands trembled. Patricia's gaze found me. "We hope tonight can be the beginning of healing. But healing requires accountability." There it was. A waiter passed behind me with champagne. I took a glass, not to drink, but because my hands were empty and I wanted them steady. Patricia gestured to Evan. He stepped forward. His voice was low, intimate enough that the room leaned in. "I love Clara," he said. The word struck an old bruise. I have loved her through stress, fear, and misunderstanding. But love cannot survive distrust. It cannot survive reckless decisions that endanger both families. When Clara transferred her savings to Julian Reed, a man with documented financial failures, she did not just risk her future, she broke faith with everyone who believed in our life. Together, a few heads turned toward me. Julian was not present. That had been my decision. This stage belonged to the people who had performed certainty. Julian's evidence was enough. His body did not need to be offered up for another family stoning. Evan looked at me with damp eyes. "I am asking her tonight, in front of the people who love us, to come back to reason." Sophie covered her mouth. Patricia nodded. Robert looked satisfied. Then Sophie stepped forward. "I didn't want to speak," she said. Which meant she very much did. Her voice trembled perfectly. "Clara has always been strong. I've always admired her. But lately, it feels like she sees enemies everywhere. She came to Larkspur Row and accused me of stealing her future, me, her sister. Soft gasps. I don't want her money, I don't want Evan. I just want my family back. She began to cry. Aunt Diane stood from a nearby table. Clara, apologize. Just like that, no questions, no evidence, a command. I looked around the room. Relatives, family, friends, investors, Westbridge men, Evan's mother, my stepfather, my stepsister, everyone waiting for me to break. In my last life, I would have cried, not because I was weak, because being misrepresented by people who know the truth is a special kind of suffocation. This time, I placed my champagne glass on a passing tray, then I walked to the front. Evan's eyes flickered. Clara, he said softly, you don't have to do this. I stopped beside him. You're right, for one bright second. Hope crossed his face, then I turned to the room. But I want to. The silence sharpened. I opened my folder. I won't ask anyone here to take my word for what happened. Words have been used very creatively in this family. Patricia's smile froze. I lifted the first page. This is the transfer confirmation for the money I lent Julian Reed. It was my personal savings, from an account solely in my name. No legal commitment existed to Pierce Development Group, Evan Hale, or any property purchase. Robert's face darkened. This is inappropriate. No, Naomi's voice said from the side entrance. It is responsive. Every head turned. Naomi walked in with a tablet and the calm expression of someone who charged in 6-minute increments and enjoyed emergencies. Patricia stiffened. Who allowed her in? I did, I said. As my attorney. Murmurs moved through the room. Naomi stood near the AV technician, who suddenly looked like he regretted his career. I continued. Second, this is the loan agreement Julian and I signed before the transfer. It includes repayment terms and collateral. You may think the decision was risky. That is your right. But it was neither brainless nor coerced. I looked at Aunt Diane. She looked away first. Small victory. I lifted the next page. Third. This is a spreadsheet Evan sent me for the Larkspur Row property he described as our future home. Evan's face changed. Clara, he warned. I kept going. In the title structure he sent, my name did not appear. Evan's name did not appear. The proposed buyer was Hale Pierce Residential Holdings. Naomi nodded to the technician. The screen behind us lit up. There it was, the spreadsheet, large, clear, undeniable. People leaned forward. Sophie's face went blank. I clicked to the next slide. Public filings show Hale Pierce Residential Holdings was registered by Hale Holdings and the Pierce Family Trust. A later amendment draft adds Sophie Pierce after closing. The screen changed again. Filing records, dates. Names, Sophie whispered. That's not. Fourth, I said. This is a message Sophie sent to a friend. The screen showed the text. Clara is so obsessed with being needed. Evan says once she calms down, she'll pay. I just have to look hurt. A sound moved through the room, not a gasp, a shift, people adjusting their belief. Sophie's crying stopped as if cut. Evan turned on her. You texted that. She stared at him. You said it. The microphone caught it. The room heard. I let the silence do its work. Then I said, fifth. This is a transcript from Larkspur Row, taken after Evan invited me there in writing. Naomi had warned me we might not use the audio directly depending on legal constraints, but the sales agent had provided a written statement after receiving our notice. Claire had confirmed what she heard. The screen displayed her statement. MS. Pierce asked whether MS. Whitman would pay. Mr. Hale stated that MS. Whitman always came back when made to feel guilty. Discussion included an LLC structure and later title change. Patricia put a hand to her throat, not because she was shocked, because her name was coming. I turned a page. Sixth, Patricia Hale was aware of the LLC structure. The screen displayed her email. Keep Clara focused on the emotional side. The title work can be cleaned up later. Patricia made a small choking sound. Evan said, Mom. She looked at him with fury. Don't you dare. Family loyalty, unraveling in real time, was quieter than I expected. No one threw a glass. No one screamed yet. They just began looking for exits from one another. Robert moved first. This has nothing to do with Pierce Development. I turned toward him. You're right. That was the personal part. Naomi clicked. The screen changed. Now it showed a timeline. Read route pilot approved. Pierce internal memo confirms successful testing. Pierce cancels contract, citing failure. Shell vendor receives consulting payments. Westbridge model revised. Metadata. Evan Hale. Pierce credit terms altered. Martin Vale files misappropriation claim against Julian Reed. Robert's face lost color. I had waited for that, not because I enjoyed fear, because his fear proved the facts had landed. I spoke slowly. Julian Reed was called bankrupt, reckless, and disgraceful at my family dinner. But records show his company's collapse may have been engineered through cancelled contracts. altered financial models, and payments to a related shell vendor. A man from Westbridge stood. "Where did you get that model?" Evan turned toward him. "Daniel, this is not." Daniel held up a hand. "Where did she get that model?" Naomi answered. "From Mr. Reed's retained records and MS. Whitman's email productions. We will provide a formal preservation request to Westbridge by Monday." The room was no longer watching me like a problem. They were watching Evan like a liability. That was the moment he understood. His eyes met mine, not with love, with hatred, then fear. "Clara," he said quietly, "you don't know what you're doing." I looked at him. "I know exactly what I'm no longer doing." My mother stepped forward, face wet. "Clara, please, enough." The word struck something old. Enough truth, enough anger, enough self-respect, enough inconvenience. I turned to her. "When Robert announced my savings at dinner, did you say enough?" She flinched. "When Evan grabbed my wrist, did you say enough, Clara?" "When Sophie cried and called me unstable while planning to take a house paid for with my money, did you say enough?" She covered her mouth. I asked the last question more softly. "When everyone called me a brainless fool for lending money to Julian, did you wonder why I trusted him more than you?" My mother began to cry harder this time. I did not go to her. Robert grabbed her arm. "Linda, don't engage." She looked at his hand on her arm for 1 second. I saw understanding enter her eyes. Too late but real. Robert turned to the room. "These are malicious distortions. My company has always operated." Daniel from Westbridge interrupted. "Robert, stop talking." That landed like a hammer. Investors murmured. Phones appeared. Someone near the back was recording. Patricia snapped, "Put those away." No one did. Evan took a step toward me. Naomi moved too, just slightly. I raised a hand, not to Naomi, to him. "Don't." He stopped. "Good, let him learn the shape of a boundary in public." His voice dropped. "After everything I gave you." I almost laughed. "What did you give me?" "A ring, a future, my name." I reached into my folder and took out a photocopy of the engagement ring appraisal and purchase receipt. Paid by Clara Whitman and Evan Hale. Split payment. My card, 70%, his card, 30%. "You gave me financing opportunities." A few people laughed before catching themselves. Evan's face flushed dark red. Sophie suddenly turned on him. "You told me Clara knew about the LLC." He stared at her. "Shut up." The room heard that too. Sophie's tears returned, but now panic made them messy. "I didn't steal anything." Evan said Clara didn't care about paperwork. He said she only wanted the wedding. There it was, not full truth, but enough truth clawing its way out under pressure. Patricia hissed, "Sophie." My mother looked like she might faint. Robert's phone began ringing, then Patricia's, then Evan's, one after another. The world outside the room began responding. Naomi checked her tablet. "Robert," she said, almost pleasantly, "I believe your board chair is calling." Robert looked at me with such naked rage that the old Clara inside me trembled. The new Clara noticed his tie was crooked. "You did this," he said. "No," I replied. "I stopped hiding it." He pointed toward the door. "You are no longer part of this family." The words hit. Of course they did. Even when you are ready, some doors still slam loudly. My mother made a broken sound. "Robert," he ignored her. "You will regret choosing a bankrupt failure over your own blood." Julian's voice came from the back of the room. "I'm not her blood." I turned. He stood near the entrance in his worn navy jacket, Naomi's associate. Beside him, I had told him not to come. He had apparently decided that being protected and being absent were not the same thing. The room parted around him, not out of respect, not yet, out of discomfort. Julian walked forward slowly. His eyes stayed on Robert. "For 3 years. You let this family call me a thief." Robert's mouth tightened. "Julian, don't be foolish." "Funny, that word keeps getting used by the wrong people." He stopped beside me, but he did not step in front of me. That mattered. He placed a flash drive on the table, full archive, emails, contracts, vendor records, copies already sent to council. Robert stared at the drive. Evan looked like he might be sick. Julian turned to the room. "Clara did not save me. She lent me money when everyone else wanted to use her. There's a difference. I owe her repayment. I owe the rest of you nothing." Then he looked at me. "Sorry, I know you told me not to come. You're late," I said. He almost smiled. Traffic, the absurd normalness of that nearly made me cry, but I did not. Not there, not for them. Patricia gathered herself. "This reception is over." "No," I said. Everyone looked at me again. I took out one final page. "This is my formal notice cancelling my engagement to Evan Hale. Copies have been sent to wedding vendors. Any remaining shared expenses will be reconciled through council. Evan, you are not authorized to represent me, access my accounts, contact vendors on my behalf, or enter my residence." Evan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I turned to Robert and Linda. This is also notice that I am withdrawing from all informal family financial support, no loans, no transfers, no co-signing, no emergency payments. My mother whispered, Clara, I faced her fully. I love you, I probably always will, but love is not authorization. Her knees seemed to weaken. Robert did not catch her. Aunt Diane did. That told me something too. Finally, I looked at Sophie. She looked smaller without an audience shaped to her advantage. You wanted my life because you thought I didn't value it, I said. That was your mistake. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean, yes, I said, you did. There was nothing else to say. I walked out before the room decided what to call me next. In the hallway, the music still played softly through hidden speakers. A ridiculous jazz version of a love song. Evan followed me. Of course he did. Clara, I kept walking. Clara, wait. I stopped near the elevator. He looked undone now, hair disturbed, tie loose, eyes red in a way that once would have broken me. We can fix this, he said. No, you don't mean that. I do. You're angry. I'm informed. He reached for my hand, then remembered the room behind us and stopped. I made mistakes. I looked at him. You made plans. His face twisted. Sophie meant nothing. That sentence was so ugly it almost freed me completely. Then you betrayed me for nothing. He swallowed. I was scared. Your family pressure, the money, the wedding. I thought if the property was structured differently, we'd protect assets. For whom? He had no answer. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. He put his hand against the door. I love you. In my last life, I had waited so long to hear desperation in his voice. Now it sounded like a bill arriving late. No, I said. You love access. The doors tried to close. His hand remained there. Clara, please. I reached forward, gently removed his hand from the sensor, and pressed the close button. The last thing I saw before the doors shut was Evan Hale standing in a marble hallway. Finally understanding that I was not coming back to be convinced. Outside, Julian waited by the curb. Naomi was already in the car, typing. You okay? Julian asked. No, he nodded. Want me to say something comforting? Not unless it's legally binding. Naomi called from the driver's seat. Get in. Both of you. Comfort can happen after evidence preservation. I laughed then, a real laugh, small, shaky, mine. As we pulled away from the Crescent Club, my phone buzzed, a news alert from a local business journal. Westbridge Capital reviewing exposure to Pierce Development Group amid document questions. I looked out the window at the bright city moving past. Everyone had laughed first. That was fine. It made the silence after the truth much sweeter. The first thing people ask after a public collapse is not what is true, it is how much of this will touch me. By Monday morning, my inbox was full of concern from people who had watched me be insulted for years without developing any. Aunt Diane wrote that she had always known Robert was too controlling. Uncle Mark asked whether his comments at dinner had been taken out of context. Patricia Hale sent one message through her attorney stating that any involvement in Hale Pierce Residential Holdings had been exploratory and mischaracterized. Evan sent nothing. That worried me more than the messages. At 9, Naomi filed formal preservation notices. At 10, Westbridge placed Evan on administrative leave pending internal review. At 11, Pierce Development Group's board called an emergency meeting. At noon, my mother came to my office building. Reception called up. There's a Linda Whitman here to see you. For a moment, I almost said no. Then I looked at the spreadsheet still open on my screen. What they took, there were things that could be recovered, money, documents, deposits. There were things that could only be named, years, trust, the reflex to apologize for being hurt. I went downstairs. My mother stood in the lobby clutching her purse with both hands. She looked older than she had on Saturday. Not because truth ages people, maybe, but because denial is a cosmetic and hers had worn off. Can we talk? She asked. Here, her face tightened. Not privately, no. The lobby had security cameras, visitors, and a receptionist 10 feet away pretending not to listen. A safe place. In other words, my mother looked around, embarrassed. That told me she still cared more about appearances than my reasons, but she stayed. Robert left. She said. I absorbed that. Where? I don't know. His assistant said his meeting counsel. Okay, Sophie is at my house. She hasn't stopped crying. Okay. My mother flinched at the second okay. She says Evan lied to her too. I'm sure that feels useful to say now. Clara, no. The word came out sharper than I intended. I lowered my voice. No, Mom, I'm not going to help organize Sophie's innocence. She swallowed. I didn't know about the house. I believe you. Relief crossed her face. I also believe you chose not to know a lot of things. The relief vanished. That is unfair, is it? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, silence worked in my favor. I said, when I was 22 and Robert needed money for a payroll gap, you told me family helps family. her eyes filled. When Sophie needed tuition, you told me I had a good job and no children. Clara, when Evan wanted wedding deposits paid early, you told me men feel pressure and I should show faith. Her tears spilled over. I thought I was keeping peace. You were spending me to buy it. She covered her mouth. The receptionist looked down at her keyboard. My mother whispered, I am sorry. The words entered me carefully. I did not reject them. I did not run toward them either. Thank you, I said. She looked up, hopeful and frightened. Can we fix this? I thought about that. In my old life, fixing meant I returned to my assigned role. In this life, it would have to mean something else, something slower. Smaller, not guaranteed. I don't know, I said, but I know I'm not coming to your house. I'm not giving money. I'm not talking to Robert. I'm not discussing Sophie's feelings, and I'm not listening to anyone defend Evan. She nodded too quickly. Of course, I mean it. I know. No, I said gently. You don't. But you can learn. That hurt her. It also gave her a map. She left without asking for a hug. That was the first respectful thing she had done in years. The legal process was not cinematic. No judge slammed a gavel the next day. No police dragged Robert from a ballroom. No dramatic confession solved everything. Reality moved through letters, interviews, audits, settlement discussions, and the grinding embarrassment of documents people had assumed no one would compare. Evan was terminated from Westbridge after the internal review found undisclosed conflicts tied to Pierce development and improper handling of model documents. The official language was careful, it always is, but in finance, careful language can still end a career. Patricia's social circle did not collapse. Exactly, people like Patricia rarely fall. They are quietly uninvited. Her charity board accepted her resignation. The Crescent Club suspended her membership review. Friends who once praised her elegance stopped returning calls because fraud is unfashionable when subpoenas may follow. Sophie tried to rebrand herself as another victim. For a week, she posted soft photos of flowers, books, and captions about betrayal. Then Marin released more screenshots after Sophie blamed her for leaking private pain. That was Sophie's mistake. People who use friends as mirrors often forget mirrors can be turned outward. The screenshots showed Sophie mocking my clothes, my savings habits, my mother's guilt, and Evan's predictability. One message read, Clara doesn't need romance, she needs a receipt and someone to tell her she's useful. When I saw it, I sat very still, not because it was untrue, because it had been close enough to old truth to sting. Then I printed it and added it to the folder. Some insults become evidence. Robert's situation became more serious by the month. The board removed him as CEO pending investigation. Vendors came forward. Martin Vale, cornered by his own exposure, began negotiating. Julian's lawsuit, once dismissed by family gossip as delusion, reopened through civil counsel. My loan to Julian became the cleanest document in the entire mess that amused Naomi endlessly. Your so-called brainless transfer has better terms than half the commercial paper in this case, she said one afternoon. I had a good attorney. You had a terrifying survival instinct. Julian used the funds exactly as outlined: legal retainers, filing fees, a small office upgrade, data recovery. 2 engineers rehired part-time to help validate the software Robert had claimed never worked. 3 months after the Crescent Club party, Julian secured a licensing deal with a regional logistics company that had once been interested in Reedroot before the scandal scared them away. The first repayment hit my account on a Tuesday morning, $50,000, principal repayment 1 of 4, memo, not charity, not rescue, contract. I stared at it for a long time, then I cried, not loud, not beautifully, just sitting at my desk, hand over my mouth, trying not to scare my own body with relief. I had not been saved by Julian, I had been repaid by a choice I made with open eyes. That distinction mattered more than anyone else would understand. Evan appeared again in late autumn. By then, the trees outside my apartment had turned gold, and I had stopped checking the hallway before opening my door. He emailed first, subject, please. I did not open it. Then he sent a letter through Naomi. She scanned it and called me. Do you want summary or full pain? Summary. He says he was pressured by his mother, manipulated by Sophie, trapped by Robert's financial situation, and too afraid to tell you the truth because he didn't want to lose you. How efficient. Everyone guilty except him. He does include 3 apologies. Do they name actions? 1 does, the other 2 are atmospheric. Then no, he asks for a meeting. No, good, I already drafted that. But Evan was not done. A week later, he waited outside the courthouse after a preliminary civil hearing where Julian's attorneys presented enough evidence to keep Robert's side from burying the case early. I had attended because one of my documents was referenced, and because I wanted to see Robert answer questions. Under oath he looked smaller in court. Most men who rule family tables do. A judge does not care who carved the turkey, who paid for the wine, or who says family with authority. A judge asks dates, a judge asks signatures, a judge asks whether the document on page 8 is accurate. Robert hated that. After the hearing, I stepped into the hallway and found Evan near the windows. He looked thinner, less polished, still handsome in the way a cracked vase can remain expensive. "Clara," he said. Naomi moved beside me. I touched her arm. "It's okay." She gave Evan a look that suggested it was not okay but allowed. "You have 5 minutes," I said. Evan swallowed. "I deserve that." "No," I said, "you received that." Pain crossed his face. Good precision again. He looked down at his hands. "I lost my job," I heard. "My mother barely speaks to me." "I'm sure she speaks at you." A tired laugh escaped him, then silence. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "That's new." He nodded. I read through everything, the emails, the LLC documents, the messages. I kept telling myself each piece had a reason, that I was protecting us, that once things settled, I'd make it fair. He looked at me. "But I never planned to ask you what fair meant." "No," I said, "you didn't." "I did love you." The old bruise stirred. "I let it, then I let it pass." "Maybe," I said, "but you loved the version of me that could be managed." He closed his eyes. "I know, I had imagined this moment in my last life." Evan ashamed. "Evan sorry." Evan finally understanding. "I thought it would heal me." It did not. It only confirmed that waiting for someone else's remorse is a terrible place to live. He reached into his coat pocket. Naomi shifted. Evan noticed and moved slowly, pulling out a small velvet box. "My engagement ring. I thought you might want it back." I looked at the box. That ring had once meant arrival, then debt, then evidence. Now it was only jewelry I had mostly paid for. "No," I said, "you should sell it then. You can send the reimbursed value to Naomi's office as part of the settlement." He winced. "I deserved that." "Stop saying deserved, it still centers you." He stared at me. I surprised myself by feeling almost gentle. "Evan, I don't hate you every minute anymore. That's not forgiveness, that's distance. Don't confuse them." His eyes filled. "Is there any life where we find our way back?" I thought of another life, a hospital hallway, an unread email, a house with Sophie's name on it, my own voice begging to be chosen. Then I thought of this life, the bank, the folder, the party, the elevator doors closing. "No," I said, "not in any life I'm willing to live." He nodded as if the words physically struck him. Then he stepped aside. I walked past him. This time, he did not follow. Winter came. Robert's investigation widened. Pierce Development entered court-supervised restructuring. My mother sold the large house she had once called Proof of Stability and moved into a smaller condo near the Botanical Gardens. Sophie stayed with her for a while, then left after my mother refused to pay her legal bills. That refusal was the first sign my mother might survive herself. She called me once a week at first. I let most calls go to voicemail, then I answered one. We spoke for 6 minutes about her new apartment, the old maple tree outside her window, and nothing that required forgiveness. It was enough. Not every relationship needs a dramatic ending. Some need a fence, a locked gate, and visiting hours. Julian's case settled the following spring. The terms were confidential, but the repayment schedule was not. He paid me back in full, principal, interest, contractual bonus tied to the licensing deal. The final transfer arrived exactly 1 year after the Bellamy House dinner. $196,830. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once stared at my nearly empty account and wondered whether terror meant regret. My account balance now looked safer than before, but that was not the real miracle. The real miracle was that I no longer looked at money and saw proof that I could be useful. I saw options. I used part of it for a down payment on a small apartment on the west side of the city. Not glamorous, not huge, 1 bedroom, good light. A balcony barely large enough for 2 chairs and a stubborn herb planter. The building had old brick, creaky stairs, and a bakery on the corner that made almond croissants every Saturday. The first night I slept there, I woke before dawn because the silence felt unfamiliar. No Evan breathing beside me, no phone buzzing with family demands, no mother crying through walls I did not live behind, no wedding invoices, no shared calendar, no location sharing, just my apartment, my name on the deed, my mug in the sink, my shoes by the door, my life, unassigned. At 8, Julian arrived with coffee and a housewarming gift wrapped badly in newspaper. "I still think gift bags are a scam," he said. Inside was a framed copy of the first page of our loan agreement. Across the bottom, he had written, "The smartest foolish decision I ever witnessed." I laughed so hard I had to sit down, then I placed it on the bookshelf in my office, not because I wanted to remember the money, but because I wanted to remember the moment I chose differently while everyone misunderstood. "Are you happy?" Julian asked from the doorway. I looked around, the desk, the light, the boxes still unpacked, the small balcony beyond the glass. I'm peaceful, I said. He nodded. That's better, isn't it? Yes. Later that afternoon, my mother came by for 10 minutes. She stood in the doorway holding a plant and looking like a woman visiting a country whose language she had never learned. It's beautiful, she said. It's mine. Her eyes filled. I know. She did not say she was proud. She did not ask whether I missed Evan. She did not mention Sophie. She handed me the plant. I thought every new home needs something alive. I took it. Thank you. She looked at the threshold. May I come in? There was a time when she would have walked in without asking. There was a time when I would have mistaken asking for coldness. Now I knew it was respect. Yes, I said. For coffee. She smiled carefully. For coffee. That was all. It was enough for one afternoon. Months later, I heard Evan moved to another state for a smaller job at a regional lender. Patricia sold her house after legal expenses and moved closer to her sister. Sophie tried lifestyle consulting online until the screenshots resurfaced. Every time she gained followers, Robert accepted a settlement that barred him from serving as an officer in certain financial roles. The family still argued about who had ruined whom. They could keep that argument. I had no use for it. On the anniversary of the Crescent Club party, Naomi took me to dinner at a loud restaurant with excellent pasta and terrible parking. She raised her glass. To the brainless fool, I touched my glass to hers. To documented foolishness, Julian, who had joined us late after a client meeting, lifted his beer. To repayment schedules, we laughed. It was not a grand ending. No one knelt in the rain. No billionaire arrived with roses. No family gathered to beg around a hospital bed. The people who used me lost access. The man who betrayed me lost the future he tried to steal. The cousin they despised regained his name because I gave him a chance under terms, not pity, and I gained something quieter than revenge. I gained the ability to hear someone say family and not automatically open my wallet. I gained the ability to hear someone say love and ask what it cost. I gained the ability to stand at a table full of people calling me a fool and still trust the woman I had become. That night, after dinner, I walked home instead of calling a car. The city was cold and bright. Storefront lights reflected on the pavement. Somewhere, music drifted from an open bar door. My phone stayed silent in my coat pocket at my building. I stopped before going inside and looked up. At my own balcony, a small lamp glowed behind the window. The plant my mother brought leaned toward it stubbornly. I smiled. Once, I thought being chosen meant someone else giving me a place in their life. Now I knew better. I had chosen myself, and this time, no one could take me back.